Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
But that hangover for some of the leadership candidates might be quite tricky. A story in the Observer this morning, Vote Leave, the campaign that led the referendum debate to for us to get out of the European Union, which of course was led by Boris Johnson and Michael Gove, have dropped their appeal against the finding that they broke electoral law by pushing the rules and spending in a way that you're not allowed to.
Spending a lot more than they were allowed to, £675,000 more than they were allowed to. It's a big break.
It was a big break, and they were fined £400,000, and at the time they said they would appeal it. They're very cross about how they believe the Electoral Commission operated. But Boris Johnson and Michael Gove, of course, were front and centre in that campaign. They've always denied they did anything wrong, or even necessarily if the political leaders knew anything about it. But I know later in the programme you've got Gisela Stewart, who was deeply involved in that campaign too.
And I just think this is quite interesting because it was my colleague Carol Cadwallader who broke this a year ago with a whistleblower called Shamir Sani. And I interviewed them on Friday for a piece we're doing this week, and he has had a terrible year. As a result of that whistleblowing, he was outed as gay. His family didn't know about it. He lost his job. He's still struggling at the moment. And I think in many ways this vindicates the position that they took in the first place.
And he's sitting at home thinking, I was right all along.
He was right,
and
yeah.
out there. And, yeah. OK, well, let's move on. Brexit demonstrations in Parliament Square this week, which we were talking about. Also this week, we saw Vote Leave dropping its appeal against the Electoral Commission's findings that it overspent during the referendum campaign. The former Labour MP Gisela Stewart was chair of Vote Leave and joins us from Birmingham. Gisela Stewart, first of all, you saw all the anger outside Parliament this week. Who do you blame for the fact that we are not outside the EU today?
I think once Parliament had put a difficult decision to the people and then promised to implement it, I think we have to blame Parliament. And the individuals, many of them are acting with the absolute best of intentions, but collectively they have shown themselves incapable of delivering what they had promised to do. And I think that is the problem. And during the paper review, you had that sort of very interesting Burkean debate, are MPs delegates, or as Burke said, you elected me for your judgment. But even Burke subsequently was deselected by his constituencies. So I think in our representative democracy, when we have no effective government, which is what we've got at the moment, we resolve those problems by general elections. Constituencies can vote for their candidates, parties decide who their candidates are, and we get a new set of people coming into Parliament. And I simply cannot see any other way out of the current situation than a general election.
Now, Dominic Cummings, who you worked with very closely during this campaign, blames in particular Tory Brexiteers in the ERG. He called them this week the narcissistic, delusional subset of the ERG, useful idiots for Remain. Do you agree with him?
I find that we've reached a point where name-calling on either side really doesn't get us anywhere. And both sides are doing this, and I would just say to them, stop it. If you're a voter out there, or if you're running a business, you're trying to conduct your life, and you've watched 2.5 years of MPs being unwilling to make compromises, then I think you get pretty fed up. And we have seen that the last vote for Theresa May's withdrawal agreement, even people like me, who really did not, this was not the deal I really wanted at the end, but if I'd still been an MP, I would have said, look, this is as good as it's going to get. And they've got to make a decision. They're either going to start falling in behind her deal, manage getting their way out, or say, we want a different set of players.
Vote Leave broke the law, according to the Electoral Commission, in a serious way. This week, Vote Leave dropped its appeal against that decision. Why?
I think what it shows is that we have been outspent at every stage of this process, whether it was before the referendum started and the government spent 9.4 million on a leaflet. During the campaign, actually, if money was the question, collectively the Remain side spent more, and going to appeals costs money too.
Yes, but
what
sorry
it
to
also
interrupt
says,
you just for a second.
But Andrew, there's one other point. If people now who argue for a second referendum, if you had a campaign where we honestly always tried to be rule compliant, we had a compliance committee, and every other organisation across the board has been found wanting in some stage.
Well, with
the
respect,
legislation for a referendum. You
didn't try very hard because you overspent the tune of £675,000 £600,000, a huge amount of money, which the Electoral Commission thought was a very, very serious electoral offence. You broke the law. It happened under your watch in this organisation. Will you apologise to people for that now?
It was in relation of one particular donation where the Electoral Commission interpreted the rules as that being acting in concert, which we had got legal advice which said it wasn't. So the key question is, Andrew, if anybody wants a second referendum, then the referendum legislation as it stands and the way the Electoral Commission and the Information Commission interprets them, that law needs rewriting. And that is something which we also have to face.
Nevertheless, the Electoral Commission is trusted by many people. At the time of their original judgment, Vote Leave said it was wholly inaccurate and contains false accusations that do not stand up to scrutiny. Do you stand by that statement?
I felt that our biggest problem in the end was that we destroyed all our data, and therefore some of the evidential basis which people were asking for. All I can tell you, Andrew, is that at every stage, in terms of the processes, we did our level best to be in compliance with the rules. If they were interpreted afterwards in a way which was different from the advice we got at that time, then so be it. So the regulators always have the final word.
You destroyed the data. The Electoral Commission were very upset that you did not cooperate more clearly with them at the time. Do you understand why many people in this country, on the other side of the argument, feel that this referendum in 2016 was corrupted and cannot be trusted because of the way Vote Leave behaved?
Well, the Electoral Commission never sought any evidence from the people from the Vote Leave campaign. But let me say something else. After 2.5 years...
They did.
Well, no, they didn't. We offered more evidence. But Andrew, if this was based, which is people are now saying, on a lie, that people didn't know what they were voting for, that they somehow were unaware of what this vote was, well, the opinions would have changed. Opinions have not changed. Opinions have hardened. And the one thing which we still haven't done is actually looking what remain in the context of the rest of the European Union would mean.
I'm not asking about the lie or what people thought, but we both know that in elections and referendums, the amount of money spent really matters. That affects the number of adverts people see, things that come through their door, and therefore how they think and how they react. £675,000 is a huge amount of money to overspend, as it were, by accident. I ask you one more time, for all those people watching who are really upset by this, can you apologise to them for that either mistake or witting breaking of the law?
What I say is that at every stage we were rule compliant according to the legal advice we were given at that time. And if money was the question, Remain spent by far more money on the campaign than Leave did. The government spent more money on the campaign than we did. So do not say this was a question of money. This is why I say the rules should have been much clearer. We had a compliance committee. As our legal advice was always that was the right thing to do. If with hindsight the regulators found otherwise, the regulator has the last word.
All right, Gisela Stewart, thanks very much indeed for talking to us.